Good afternoon. Please be seated. I'll recognize the Honorable second elected member from Georgetown to say prayers. We're getting our exercise today.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Let us pray. Almighty God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech thee so to direct and prosper the deliberation of the Legislative Assembly now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations for the glory of thy name, and for the safety, honor, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless our Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, Charles, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established among us. Especially, we pray for the Governor of our islands, the Premier, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, the Leader of the Opposition, Ministers of the Cabinet, ex officio members and members of the Legislative Assembly, that we may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of our high office. All this we ask for thy great name's sake. Let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us and give us peace, now and always. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated.
Administration of oaths or affirmations.
None.
Read by the Honourable Speaker, messages and announcements.
Just to say that a request have come in to take photographs from the media, and seeing that it's the time of the day, it is an electoral season, if the chair has granted permission for them to so do whenever they arrive.
Presentation of petitions. Presentation of papers and of reports. Financial statements for the Government of the Cayman Islands for the year ended 30th of June 2015, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
Recognize the Honourable Minister for Finance and Economic Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the financial statements for the Government of the Cayman Islands for the year ended 30th of June 2015.
So ordered. Does the Honourable Minister wish to speak further to his report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. If I could ask the Sergeant to bring me the lectern.
Certainly.
Madam Speaker, although the document that has just been tabled is entitled Statement of the Government of the Cayman Islands for the year ended 30th of June 2015, these financial statements are also inclusive of the financial results and financial position of the statutory authorities and government companies. Madam Speaker, on the 7th of December 2016, the Auditor General issued an adverse opinion on the financial statements for the government of the Cayman Islands for the year ended 30th of June 2015. The basis of the Auditor General's adverse opinion was primarily due to, number one, the exclusion of the Public Service Pension Board from the entire public sector consolidated financial statements. Number two, inaccuracies arising from opening balances and subsequent adjustments in statutory authorities and government companies. Number three, revenue receivables and unearned revenue affected by revenue completeness. Number four, road network incompleteness and valuation issues. Number five, the lack of revaluation or inconsistent accounting policies of statutory authorities and government companies with respect to property, plant, and equipment. Number six, landfill and environmental liabilities which were unaccounted for. Number seven, poor controls over listing of property, plant, and equipment listings. And number eight, the understatement of long-term employee health and pension liabilities and the omission of disclosures. Madam Speaker, I wish to provide details on some of these factors that led to the adverse opinion by the Office of the Auditor General. Madam Speaker, with respect to exclusion of the Public Service Pension Board from the consolidation, the 2014-15 entire public sector consolidated financial statements exclude the Public Service Pension Board, as these assets are being held in trust for pensioners and public servants. The Auditor General opines that the government has control over the Public Service Pension Board by virtue of its ability to appoint persons as directors of the board, and therefore all of its transactions and balances should be consolidated in the financial statements as defined by International Public Sector Accounting Standard number 6, consolidated and separate financial statements. With respect to revenue, receivables, and unearned revenue affected by revenue completeness, Madam Speaker, the Auditor General was unable to conclude on the completeness of coercive revenue, unearned revenue, trade, and other receivables as at the 30th of June 2015. With respect to the road network incompleteness and valuation issues, the Auditor General was unable to conclude on the fairness of the property, plant, and equipment due to the lack of assertions on the fairness of the net book value for roads and sidewalks stated in the financial statements. It could not be asserted that the value of property, plant, and equipment shown in the financial statements was completely and fairly stated, as a complete valuation assessment of the road network was not carried out. With respect to unaccounted landfill and environmental liabilities, Madam Speaker, that there was no process to properly assess and account for the government's environmental liabilities. The Auditor General believes that the liabilities for provision for the Georgetown landfill and the Frank Sound site are likely to be understated. With respect to poor controls over listing of property, plant, and equipment, the financial statements of certain statutory authorities and government companies were qualified due to the lack of detailed listings of property, plant, and equipment. The Auditor General was unable to determine the fairness of such property, plant, and equipment included in the consolidated financial statements for the entire public sector and the impact on the overall balance of the property, plant, and equipment. With respect to the understatement of long-term employee benefits, liabilities, and omissions of disclosures, Madam Speaker, the Auditor General determined that the consolidated liabilities of the government are understated. Government has not recognized, by including on the face of its balance sheet, CI 1.2 billion of liabilities arising from its post-retirement healthcare obligations based on a 2014 valuation report. However, details of the post-retirement healthcare expenses and liabilities are provided in the notes to the financial statements, so that readers of the accounts are provided with details of this important matter. With respect to the overview of the financial statements for the year ended the 30th of June 2015, The statement of financial position as at the 30th of June 2015 shows that the entire public sector ended the financial year with CI 2.7 billion in total assets, 1.1 billion in total liabilities, and 1.6 billion in net assets. The statement of financial performance for the year ended 30th of June 2015 shows that during the year, the entire public sector, inclusive of statutory authorities and government companies, earned 891.1 million Cayman Islands dollars in operating revenue and incurred $744.4 million in operating expenses and other gains and losses. The resulting operating surplus for the entire public sector was CI $146.7 million. The statement of cash flows shows that the net cash inflows from operating activities total 201 million Cayman Islands dollars. The net cash outflows used by investing and financing activities totaled CI 34 million and $41.7 million respectively. The cash and cash equivalents for the entire public sector at the 30th of June 2015 totaled $406.4 million. The statement of changes in net worth shows the total net worth of the government at 1.6 billion Cayman Islands dollars. The public debt for the entire public sector, inclusive of statutory authorities and government companies, stood at CI 629.7 million as at the 30th of June 2015. The financial statements also include the principles of responsible financial management and show that as at the 30th of June 2015, the government was in compliance with the surplus requirement, net worth, net debt, and financial risk ratios. The surplus for core government was CI 124.9 million, net worth was 1.6 billion, and net debt was 60.6% of core government operating revenues. The government, however, at that time was not in compliance with the debt service ratio and cash reserve days. Madam Speaker, the non-compliance with the principles of responsible financial management just mentioned was in respect of the year ended 30th of June 2015. The Legislative Assembly and the public have been made aware that 1 year later, full compliance with all of the principles of responsible financial management was achieved by the required deadline of 30th of June 2016. Madam Speaker, the adverse opinion on the 2014-15 entire public sector consolidated financial statements is the second audit opinion that has been issued on the entire public sector financial statements since the Public Management and Finance Law was introduced in 2004. An adverse opinion was also issued on the 2013-14 entire public sector consolidated financial statements on the 24th of September 2015. Under the Public Management and Finance Law, the government is required to produce audited financial statements for the 2008 to 9 and subsequent years. For the fiscal years 2008-9 to 2012-13 inclusive, the Auditor General's Office disclaimed the entire public sector consolidated financial statements for those years. This means, Madam Speaker, that due to the quality of the information provided, the Auditor General was unable to render an audit opinion on those years' financial statements. Madam Speaker, the government has made and continues to make significant progress in addressing the concerns reported by the Auditor General. However, it is important to note that the government would not have had the opportunity to address all of the issues that were identified during the 2013-14 financial year prior to the commencement of the 2014-15 financial year. A number of the audit concerns were addressed in time for the 2015-16 entire public sector consolidated financial statements, which is currently being audited by the Office of the Auditor General. The 2015-16 entire public sector consolidated financial statements now include the revalued amounts for property, plant, and equipment for the entire public sector, as well as the revalued amounts for the island's entire road network, inclusive of sidewalks. The 2015-16 entire public sector financial statements also include the long-term liabilities of employee benefits and the cost of pensions. Madam Speaker, It is envisaged that most of the remaining issues that have contributed to an adverse opinion on the 2014-15 entire public sector consolidated financial statements will be addressed for the financial year ending 31st of December 2018. It is also important, Madam Speaker, that the public be aware of the prospective audit opinions issued on other national governments' consolidated financial statements. As an example, in a letter dated the 12th of January 2017, addressed to the President of the United States, the President of the U.S. Senate, and the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, the Comptroller General of the United States detailed that since the U.S. federal government began preparing consolidated financial statements 20 years ago, major impediments have prevented his office from rendering an opinion on the federal government's accrual-based consolidated financial statements over that 20-year period. A disclaimer position, Madam Speaker, which means an opinion has not been reached at all on the U.S. federal government's consolidated financial statements for the past 20 years. Therefore, an adverse opinion issued on the Cayman Islands' entire public sector consolidated financial statements is not inferior when compared to the U.S. federal government's consolidated financial statements. This does not mean that the government is content with the present audit opinion, and it is our goal to achieve, at a minimum, a qualified audit opinion on the entire public sector consolidated financial statements with respect to the financial year ending 31st December 2018. Such a qualified audit opinion on our entire public sector financial statements would put the Cayman Islands public sector on par with that of the United Kingdom. The financial statements for the government of the Cayman Islands for the year ended 30th of June 2015 are available on the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development's website, which is www.mof.gov.ky. Finally, Madam Speaker, the government has given the fullest possible account of its financial stewardship and has done so during its current term by virtue of the following facts. Number one, the entire public sector's consolidated financial statements for the government's first year in office, that being the financial year ending 30th of June 2014, were tabled in the Legislative Assembly on the 27th of April 2016. Number two, the entire public sector consolidated financial statements for the government's second year in office, that being the financial year that ended the 30th of June 2015, were tabled in this House a short while ago. Number three, the entire public sector's consolidated financial statements for the government's third year in office, that being the financial year that ended the 30th of June 2016, have been prepared and are currently being reviewed by the Office of the Auditor General. If the audit of these financial statements was completed before the dissolution of this Legislative Assembly, then these financial statements would also have been tabled in the House during March 2017. Since the audit is still ongoing, it was not possible for the government to have tabled audited financial statements for the year ended 30th of June 2016 before the House dissolves, either today or tomorrow. And number four, the fourth financial period under this government's tenure ends on the 31st of December 2017. And as the year has not yet ended, financial statements for this year could not be produced prior to the Legislative Assembly's dissolution. And in addition, Madam Speaker, consolidated financial statements for the entire public sector, the 16 ministries, portfolios, and offices that constitute the central government, and the 26 statutory authorities and government companies have to produce their own financial statements each year. For the 3 financial years ended the 30th of June 2014, the 30th of June 2015, and the 30th of June 2016, the vast majority of the 42 entities that make up the entire public sector have tabled their annual audited financial statements in the Legislative Assembly. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Moody's Investor Service, Rating Action, Moody's affirmed the Cayman Islands, AA3 rating maintains stable outlook. To be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
Recognize the Honourable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honorable House the Moody's Investor Services Rating Action Report of the Cayman Islands issued on the 17th of February, 2017.
So ordered. Does Honourable Minister of Finance wish to speak further?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in the report released on the 17th of February 2017, Moody's Investor Services reaffirmed the Cayman Islands AA3 government bond and issuer rating, along with a stable outlook. Our sovereign rating remains in the top tier of the rating matrix and is only three notches below the highest rating of AAA. Moody's stable outlook reflects the evaluation of the economic and financial performance of the Cayman Islands against a number of criteria. Our positive rating is the result of the following key drivers. Number one, a comparatively low and falling government debt burden. Number two, high wealth that balances a small, undiversified economy. And number three, a strong institutional framework. With respect to the rating rationale, Madam Speaker, the core of Moody's sovereign rating methodology continues to focus on an assessment of sovereign credit risk based on the interplay of four key factors, those being economic strength, institutional strength, fiscal strength, and susceptibility to event risk. I will briefly explain the significant indicators impacting each factor. With respect to economic strength, Moody's determination of economic strength is reflected in the economy's wealth, size, diversification, and long-term potential. The Cayman Islands' economic strength was rated moderate by Moody's, being amongst the highest of all of Moody's rated sovereigns. Our GDP per capita positively compensated for our limitations as a small dual-pillar economy, which is currently showing robust signs of improvement. Our high level of economic development increases our resilience in the face of economic and natural disaster shocks. Concerning institutional strength, Madam Speaker, institutional strength reflects a country's governance model, the quality of its institutions, and the predictability of its policies. Moody's ranks the Cayman Islands' institutional strength at very high on a global scale. Using the World Bank's governance indicators as a proxy of institutional strength across nations, Cayman is among the highest in the region for this category and ranks in the top 20th percentile of all sovereigns rated by Moody's, including highly developed countries, Madam Speaker. The World Bank's governance indicators measures the quality of governance in over 200 countries, capturing 6 key dimensions of governance, those being voice and accountability, political stability and absence of violence, government effectiveness, regulatory quality, rule of law, and control of corruption. Moody's credits our relationship with the United Kingdom for enhancing the stability of our government and establishing the success in our financial services industry. Concerning fiscal strength, Madam Speaker, Moody's defines the fiscal strength of a country based on the overall health of government finances, particularly with regards to its debt levels. The fiscal strength of the Cayman Islands was rated as very high. Madam Speaker, this score is due to the government's commitment to reducing our public sector debt and our long history of pegging our currency to the United States dollar, which significantly reduces the risk of exchange rate shocks. And concerning susceptibility to event risk, Madam Speaker, the final factor in Moody's credit risk weighting methodology is a country's susceptibility to event risk, which evaluates a country's vulnerability to any risk which may severely strain public finances. The Cayman Islands' susceptibility to event risk is low. This rating is due to the risk of external shocks given our small and open economy, strong fiscal oversight by the United Kingdom, and our relative wealth, which provides a strong buffer against weather-related shocks. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, despite Cayman's high GDP per capita and strong fiscal strength, we cannot become complacent. The government must continue to remain committed to ensuring that our debt burden remains very low and to look for opportunities and developments that can diversify and grow our economy. Cayman's credit outlook reflects Moody's confidence in our country's economic, financial, and institutional strengths. Our rating proves that government's general fiscal fundamentals are strong and that government's finances are stable, and our approach is prudent. Finally, the government regards this very positive report by Moody's as an independent attestation of its sterling management of the country's economy and public finances. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport Annual Report 2016 to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of District Administration, Tourism and Transport.
Recognize Honourable Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this honorable House the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport's Annual Report 2016.
So ordered. Does Honourable Deputy Premier wish to speak further?
Madam Speaker, just to say that it's an unmodified report, which we're very pleased of, and to invite all honorable members to have a look at it at their convenience.
Sister Island Affordable Housing Development Corporation Annual Report for the year ended 30th of June 2016 to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of District Administration, Tourism and Transport.
Recognize Honourable Deputy Premier.
Thank you again, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this honorable House Sister Islands Affordable Housing Development Corporation Annual Report for the year ended 30th of June 2016.
So ordered. Does Honourable Deputy Premier wish to speak further?
Again, Madam Speaker, just to note that it's an unmodified opinion and to invite all honorable members to read at their convenience. Thank you.
Cayman Islands Government Portfolio of Legal Affairs Annual Report 2015-16 to be laid on the table by the Honourable Attorney General, ex officio member responsible for the Portfolio of Legal Affairs.
Recognize Honourable Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I seek the leave of this honourable House to lay on the table the report of the Portfolio of Legal Affairs for the period 2015-2016.
So ordered. Does Honourable Attorney General wish to speak further?
No, Madam Speaker, just to observe that the report is self-explanatory and fairly informative, and I commend it to honourable members of this House and the general public. Thank you.
Cayman Islands Government Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions Annual Report 2015-16 to be laid on the table by the Honourable Attorney General, ex officio member responsible for the Portfolio of Legal Affairs.
Once again, recognize Honourable Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I seek the leave of this honourable House to lay on the table the report from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions for the period 2015-2016. That's the annual report, Madam Speaker.
So ordered. Does the Honourable Attorney General wish to speak further?
Madam Speaker, no. Just to observe that the report again is very self-explanatory and insightful, and I commend it to honourable members of this House and the general public.
Judicial Administration Cayman Islands Annual Report 2015-16 to be laid on the table by the Honourable Attorney General, ex officio member responsible for the Portfolio of Legal Affairs.
The Chair recognizes Honourable Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I seek the leave of this House, honourable House, to lay on the table the annual report of the Cayman Islands Judicial Administration for the period 2015-2016.
So ordered. Does the Honourable Attorney General wish to speak to it?
Madam Speaker, no. Just to observe again that the report is self-explanatory, and I commend it to the honourable members of this House as well as the general public. I thank you.
Cayman Islands Human Rights Commission Annual Report 2016 to be laid on the table by the Honourable Deputy Governor, ex officio member responsible for the Portfolio of the Civil Service.
Recognize Honourable Deputy Governor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the 2016 Annual Report of the Human Rights Commission.
So ordered. Does the Honourable Deputy Governor wish to speak further?
Yes, Madam Speaker, just briefly. to offer a brief overview of the 2016, my apologies, the 2016 annual report of the human rights, which relates to the period 1st of January 2016 to the 31st of December 2016. Madam Speaker, throughout the 2016 reporting period, the Human Rights Commission sought to continue to uphold its constitutional mandate for promoting understanding and observance of human rights in the Cayman Islands. Through the acceptance and consideration of complaints alleging breaches of human rights by working closely with the Cayman Islands and British governments, along with international, national, and local NGOs, the Commission tries to address the human rights implications of issues that dominated the public agenda in 2016. Equally, the Commission sought to draw public and government attention to human rights concerns that have not received critical or public consideration. While it's addressed almost all of the rights set out in the Cayman Islands Bill of Rights 2016, it saw particular reinforcement of the rights of protection from torture and inhumane treatment, fair treatment for prisoners, non-discrimination, and lawful administrative action. Madam Speaker, the Commission also continued to review numerous policies and procedures and legislation developed by the Cayman Islands government to ensure compliance with the Bill of Rights. Notably, recommendations were made regarding the handling of migrants and asylum seekers, appeals procedures within the Royal Cayman Islands Police, and for safeguarding the rights of persons in the LGBTQ community. During the reporting year, the Commission received 47 complaints from members of the public alleging breaches by public officials of their human rights. Of those cases, 7 remained open at the end of the reporting year and 40 were closed. In respect of all the cases remaining open at the end of the 2016, the Commission is either currently investigating possible breaches or are in correspondence with the relevant public authorities. It is notable that during the 2016 year, immigration appeared to be of great concern to the public once again, although this can be attributed to the unusually high influx of illegal Cuban migrants that landed and went through the asylum-seeking process this year. Madam Speaker, the Commission continued to increase engagement in public education in 2016, and they provided a very helpful mental health booklet in partnership with the Mental Health Commission, which provided illustrative descriptions on how various rights apply in a mental health context. The Commission also launched an updated website, which has improved accessibility to the public generally and added extensive links to local, regional, and international resources. Madam Speaker, the Commission has worked hard over 2016 to promote human rights in the Cayman Islands. However, the Commission recognizes that it would have been impossible for it to have carried out its work without the assistance of many members of the public, private entities, and the government employees. As such, the 2016 annual report acknowledges several individual companies and public authorities, all of who over the year has provided particular assistance to the Commission endeavors to promote compliance with the Bill of Rights. Madam Speaker, in the report, the Commission highlighted many individuals, including the manager and her staff of the Commission Secretariat, and a number of civil servants who went far above and beyond the call of duty in servicing the Commission. And as head of the civil service, I add my thanks to those government employees who have been named in the report for their work. Madam Speaker, this year, going forward, the Commission intends on focusing its efforts on human rights issues related to immigration, lawful administrative action, disabilities, elections, protection of children, and bullying. Madam Speaker, I encourage members of this Honorable House and the public to familiarize themselves with the contents of this report, which is available online at www.humanrightscommission.ky. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
report of the Standing Public Accounts Committee on the reports of the Office of the Auditor General on Cayman Islands Health System, January 2017, and ensuring quality health care and a healthy population, January 2017. Report of the Office of the Auditor General on ensuring quality health care and a healthy population, January 2017. Report of the Office of the Auditor General on Cayman Islands Health System, January 2017, to be laid on the table by the elected member for Northside, Chairman of the Standing Public Accounts Committee.
Recognize honourable member from the District of Northside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg leave of the House to table the following reports. Report of the Standing Public Accounts Committee on the reports of the Office of the Auditor General on Cayman Islands Health System, January 2017, and ensuring quality health care and a healthy population, January 2017. Report on the Office of the Auditor General on ensuring quality health care and a healthy population, January 2017, and reports of the Office of the Auditor General of the Cayman Islands Health System, January 2017.
So ordered. Does the honourable member from Northside wish to speak to these reports?
Just briefly, Madam Speaker, to highlight the recommendations in the PAC report. And Madam Speaker, let me say firstly that I want to congratulate the staff of the Audit Office for compiling the report Cayman Islands Health System, January 2017, because that is a complete reference to the whole health system in the country, and I believe it will form a very useful document for healthcare policies by governments in the future. The committee did not do any review of that report because that report was just a summary of all of the health system. The committee reviewed ensuring quality health care and a healthy population, January 2017, and made the following recommendations, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the report of the Auditor General was carried out in Grand Cayman, Cayman Islands. The objective of the audit was to review the health systems available in the Cayman Islands and to deliver the quality of a comprehensive health service system. The Public Accounts Committee fully supports the 9 recommendations that were made by the Audit Office and finds it quite troubling that the management response was that the recommendations were noted. The PSC recommends that the Ministry reassess the report and as well as careful consider the 9 recommendations and produce a plan to implement the suggested recommendations. The Public Accounts Committee is particularly troubled by the findings and report that identified the following: the perceived serious capacity shortage in the Ministry, the Department of Health Regulatory Services, and the Health Services Authority. Interviews of officials looking to the Ministry for decisions, assistance, or guidance showed that they had concerns about the Minister's responsiveness, the lack of a performance management and reporting framework that allows for regular monitoring of outcomes from policy decisions. D, the lack of medical systems administrative knowledge at the Ministry level was clearly demonstrated during the hearings. Therefore, the PSC strongly recommends, given the magnitude of the expenditures and the impact of these findings on the health of the country, that the government address these concerns with some urgency. 1, the Ministry of Health, with the advice of the Health Services Authority Medical Director and in consultation with the Medical and Dental Council, should issue a policy on how to develop Caymanian doctors to board certification level and provide a grant to the HSA to fund these staff developments through proper training. The Ministry of Health, in consultation with the Health Insurance Commission, should review relevant legislation to enable private sector coverage into retirement. The Medical Officer of Health should collect relevant data from the private sector as well as the Health Services Authority in future, and should report publicly on both sets of data on a regular basis to help inform policy and decisions making. And Madam Speaker, this is not in the report, but I would like to add my personal concern of officialdom crossing the barrier of into the realm of the regulatory authorities. I don't believe that that is good practice for the future. Madam Speaker, the Public Accounts Commission wishes to draw the government's attention to Standing Order 77, Suborder 7, which reads, the government minute shall be laid on the table of this House within 3 months of the laying of the report of the committee and of the report of the Auditor General to which it relates. The PSC expects government to honour the requirements of the Standing Order. The PSC expects that the government minute will show how the resources to complete the implementation of these recommendations by the Auditor General is being provided in the budget. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Report of the Standing Public Accounts Committee and the report of the Office of the Auditor General on scrap metal removal contract, November 2016. Report of the Office of the Auditor General on scrap metal removal contract, November 2016, to be laid on the table by the elected member for Northside, Chairman of the Standing Public Accounts Committee.
Recognised honourable member from the District of Northside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I seek leave of the House to lay on the table of this Honourable House the report of the Standing Public Accounts Committee on the reports of the Office of the Auditor General on scrap metal removal contract, November 2016, reports of the Office of the Auditor General on scrap metal removal contract, November 2016.
So ordered. Does honourable member wish to speak to the report?
Just briefly to say, Madam Speaker, that the Public Accounts Committee agrees with the recommendations of the Auditor's Office, and that there was no need for the Public Accounts Committee to review his recommendations, because we believe that the whole issue surrounding scrap metal has been well ventilated in public discussion in this country, and we don't think it would add anything to have done another review. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Annual report of the Standing Public Accounts Committee to be laid on the table by the elected member for Northside, Chairman of the Standing Public Accounts Committee.
Once again, recognise the elected member from Northside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg leave of the House to lay on the table of this Honourable House the annual report of the Standing Public Accounts Committee 2016-2017.
So ordered. Does honourable member wish to speak further?
Just briefly, Madam Speaker, in that I wish to take the opportunity to express my personal gratitude for the hard work done by the members of the PSC and their involvement and guidance in completing the reports that were tabled during this period. And the committee is also appreciative of the efforts of the Auditor General and his staff in the summary reports and for the support, assistance, and constructive advice given throughout the deliberations. Finally, Madam Speaker, we wish to thank the staff of the Legislative Assembly for their assistance and hard work and continued effort during this period of time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Legislative Assembly of the Cayman Islands, report of the Standing Orders Committee on the review of the Legislative Assembly Standing Orders 2006 revision, 23rd of March 2017, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Deputy Governor, ex officio member responsible for the portfolio of the service, Chairman of the Standing Orders Committee.
Recognise Honourable Deputy Governor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honorable House the Legislative Assembly of the Cayman Islands report of the Standing Orders Committee on the review of the Legislative Assembly Standing Orders 2006 revision.
So ordered. Does the Honorable Deputy Governor wish to speak to this report?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this report brings our standing orders in line with our new constitution. And I also want to record our grateful thanks to you for chairing the subcommittee that that actually did the work and produced a comprehensive report. Madam Speaker, in saying all of that, we also believe that it's absolutely critical that we allow the standing orders to be actually approved during this last sitting of the Parliament. We don't want this to be put forward again to another Parliament. So with your permission, Madam Speaker, I would wish to move a motion to approve these amendments to the Standing Orders 2006 revision. Madam Speaker, I'm aware that there's a requirement under Standing Order 87-1 that 12 days notice is required on a motion to amend the standing orders. I'm also aware that under the said standing orders, the Honorable Speaker has authority to waive the 12 days notice, and I respectfully seek your permission to do so now, Madam Speaker.
Permission granted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Motion to approve amendments to the Standing Order 2006 revision. Whereas Section 721 of the Cayman Islands Constitution Order 2009 provides that subject to the Constitution, the Legislative Assembly may from time to time make, amend standing orders for the regulation and orderly conduct of its own proceedings.
Honorable Member, I take it that you're moving it under Standing Order 24-9H?
That's correct, Madam Speaker. Okay. Thank you very much for your guidance. And whereas Standing Order Committee, the committee, was convened by Government Motion Number 9 of 2015-2016 on the 22nd of October 2015, and tasked with establishing a subcommittee to review the Standing Orders 2006 revision and make recommendations for amending the standing orders as deemed desirable and necessary to the committee. And whereas on the 23rd of March 2017, the committee approved the report and recommendations of the subcommittee. And whereas the Legislative Assembly, pursuant to Section 721(1) of the Constitution and Standing Order 87, is now being asked to approve the report of the committee for the relevant amendments to the standing orders, subject to approval of Her Excellency the Governor. And whereas Standing Order 87-1 states that unless the presiding officer directs no less than 12 days notice of a motion to amend the standing orders to be given, and the notice shall be accompanied by the draft of the proposed amendments. And be it now resolved that in accordance with Section 721 of the Constitution Order 2009 and Standing Order 87, standing orders be amended as proposed in the report entitled Report of the Standing Orders Committee for the Review of the Legislative Assembly Standing Orders 2006 revision. I thank you, ma'am.
The question is that the standing orders be amended in accordance with the Standing Orders Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I beg your pardon. I should have actually asked prior to putting the question, although I had an indication that members were in support. Does any member wish to speak to the motion? Does any other member wish to speak to the motion? Final call. Does any member wish to speak to the motion? If not, I'll ask the Honorable Deputy Premier should he wish to reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to thank everyone for their tacit support, and again, to thank yourselves and the subcommittee for all their work that they did in bringing up the standing orders up to date and in accordance with the 2009 Constitution.
The question is that the standing orders be amended in accordance with the Standing Orders Committee report dated the 23rd of March 2017 to bring them in compliance with the Constitution 2009 report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, the motion is carried.
Questions to honourable ministers and members of the cabinet.
None.
Statements by honourable members and ministers of the cabinet.
I recognize Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to make a statement this afternoon with respect to the government's four-year report, which summarizes its achievements over the course of this term, and to lay on the table of this Honourable House a copy of the report, and to advise members of this Honourable House and the broader public that copies are now generally available and or will be available in hard copy and on the government website shortly. Madam Speaker, there is a saying that promises are just words until they are fulfilled. When we took office, this government was determined that the promises made in our manifesto would be fulfilled. We understood that the Caymanian people had, in the majority, put their faith in us as government. They expected that we would not only act with honesty and transparency, but also deliver on what we said we would do. And whilst I'm proud to deliver this report, I'm even more proud, Madam Speaker, of this government for the many accomplishments achieved during this term. We have kept faith with the Caymanian people and kept the promises made in 2013, by and large. One merely need review our 2013 manifesto to get an appreciation as to how much was achieved. And indeed, Madam Speaker, much has been achieved. Before we took office, our islands were not in a good place. The economy was stagnant, and as reported in a Chamber of Commerce survey that year, business confidence was low. Private sector investment was at a standstill. Small businesses were hurting, and several were closing. Fewer cruise ships were coming here, and taxi and tour operators were also hurting. And unemployment of Caymanians was at a high of 10.5%, about 2,000 people. Because of a stagnant economy and unusually high unemployment, there were Caymanians in financial difficulty, some defaulting on mortgages. We understood, as our 2013 manifesto noted in the section entitled Getting Back on Course, that with a strong economy, people have jobs and opportunities so they can earn money, live happy and productive lives, and take care of their families. Madam Speaker, we also understood that to improve the lot of Caymanians, we had to focus and to succeed in key areas: restore government finances, growing revenues and managing expenses, return the confidence of the business sector and of the United Kingdom in government, create an environment for businesses to grow and create jobs for Caymanians, put in place a platform for social change and education that could help better the lives of Caymanians, and to focus on infrastructure to better serve the public and support business growth, as well as create employment and entrepreneurial opportunities for Caymanians. Madam Speaker, I'm sure that as you review this report, you may be tempted to agree that this government, in a short 4 years, has shown that with a vision and a plan, coupled with teamwork, we are indeed a government that has gotten things done. Since 2013, by working with business, the economy has grown about 2.5% annually. Unemployment amongst Caymanians has been reduced from 10.5% in 2012 to 5.6% in 2016. Government finances have been restored, and we are in full compliance with all the financial targets of the Public Management and Finance Law. We have grown government surpluses over the 4 years to a total of $414 million. That's quite an accomplishment, Madam Speaker, considering all the revenue government has foregone by reducing duties on consumable goods, as well as diesel for electricity generation, reducing the cost of living, giving civil servants an increase in pay, and standardizing pay throughout the public services sector. General reserves have increased by 53 million to a total of 97 million as at February 2017, leaving us better prepared in the event of a global recession or national disaster. We are reducing the national debt in a planned manner, repaying 123 million by the end of this financial year. This is saving the country millions of dollars in interest payments annually, savings that can be used back into the economy to benefit Caymanians. And we are in a good position, barring any economic or natural disaster, to repay the US $312 million bullet bond in full when it comes due in 2019. By better managing government finances, we increase surpluses, and in so doing, have been able to greatly reduce taxes on fuel used by CUC for electricity, leaving over $17 million annually in the pockets of families and businesses. We also reduced the import duty on goods imported by licensed traders, putting more than $4 million back into the community each year. Madam Speaker, we also greatly reduced fees to small businesses to encourage Caymanians to start businesses, and we have seen the number of new small businesses increase as they take advantage of the lower fees and a growing economy. And government and the Small Business Association are working together to provide training, mentoring, and consultancy support to small businesses, including startups. We have not only reduced taxes and fees, but we are the first government in many decades to not increase taxes or borrowing. Government is paying its expenses from cash. Capital and infrastructure projects underway are also being done from cash. Madam Speaker, we introduced the Cayman Islands Hospitality School and the Cayman Islands School of Nursing to train Caymanians for good careers. We introduced the readytowork.ky program to help support Caymanians needing assistance to get and keep jobs. We also reversed the salary reductions placed on civil servants and provided much-needed bonuses and cost of living adjustments, as well as addressed pay stagnation for long-serving civil servants. By creating an environment that encourages business and development, the economy is buoyant with new construction projects, creating employment across the Cayman Islands. Government's infrastructure projects are also providing jobs for Caymanians during construction and after completion. I am happy with the work that continues at the Owen Roberts International Airport. This $55 million expansion will almost triple the size of the airport terminal, including new arrival and departure halls. Madam Speaker, I'm also happy with the roadworks that have taken place over the entire term and those that are still on the drawing board. All of these improvements are helping to take traffic congestion out of the town center and allow some roads to be pedestrianized. Work is underway to make Estella Tibbetts a 4-lane carriageway, and improvements are slated for Thomas Russell Way, Edward, and 4th Streets. The widening of Linford Pearson Highway is well underway, and when done, will help ease traffic congestion on this major roadway. These roadworks are a key part of the revitalization of Georgetown. Madam Speaker, we have not only successfully improved the management of our landfills and enhanced our recycling efforts, but we've also completed plans for a sustainable solid waste management system. A contract should be signed in the coming months for delivery of a modern waste-to-energy plant, as well as recycling and composting elements. This will reduce waste going into the new landfill by an estimated 90%. We promised to fix the dump, and we are delivering, including getting rid of the old tires at the landfill. And just this Monday, Madam Speaker, I had the privilege of launching the recycling program for tires at the landfill. When the project is complete, the current landfill will be capped. We're also making headway on a cruise berthing facility and improved cargo port, with plans being considered that will reduce the amount of dredging required. Government continues to have productive discussions with cruise lines in relation to their involvement in the berthing facility, including a financing element, and civil engineering design works being done will aid in the financing model. Madam Speaker, this government has also laid the groundwork for a residential mental health facility that will include occupational and vocational programs to help patients get better and reintegrate into the community. Work has recommenced at John Gray High School. Construction of the gym is expected to be completed in May this year, while plans are being developed to complete the broader elements of the school. Improvements to education have been a focus of this government. A modern education law has been passed, the schools inspectorate has been reinstated, and all public schools have undergone an independent review. This has allowed educators and government to determine how best to improve the system of education and keep all parties accountable for its success. Madam Speaker, in October 2015, this government kept another promise by passing legislation to modernize the election process and to introduce one person, one vote and single-member electoral districts for the upcoming 2017 general elections. This is one of many historic pieces of legislation passed by this government. Another is the National Minimum Wage Order, as part of an amendment to the labor law that for the first time ever seeks to ensure that the most vulnerable in our society can receive a minimum wage. It will be reviewed every few years to ensure that it is still relevant and is keeping pace with inflation. Madam Speaker, these are just a few of the highlights of this government's achievements over the term. They are spelled out in considerable detail in the report itself. Whilst I view this as the achievements of government, it is in fact the achievement of the Caymanian people, including the good men and women of the civil service who have worked with elected members of government to get the Cayman Islands back on course. I should say, Madam Speaker, the public service, because it also includes the statutory authorities and government-owned companies. Shakespeare, in the play Julius Caesar, noted, "There is a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at the flood leads on to fortune. Omitted, all the voyage of their life is bound in shallows and in miseries. On such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current when it serves, or lose our venture." Madam Speaker, we have kept the promises made to the Caymanian people upon taking office. We did not dither, regardless of the challenges. We pressed on to ensure that the good ship Cayman remained afloat, on course, and in full sail, coming out of the shallows and set on a course for success, taking Caymanians and this beautiful country of ours toward a safer and better future. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honourable Minister responsible for financial service, planning. The Honourable Minister responsible for financial services. Beg your pardon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, members of this Honourable House are aware of the efforts to modernize our local licensing framework through the strengthening of the trade and business licensing law. In addition to the legal framework, a lot of work has gone on behind the scenes to improve workflow and processing within the Department of Commerce and Investment. Businesses continue to benefit from government initiatives such as the Small Business Incentive Program offered since 2014. Approximately 2,500 businesses have had their licenses renewed or granted with reduced fees, many having the fee waived up to 100%. This has also resulted in 1,000 new licenses being granted for startup companies. Madam Speaker, with this, I am now pleased to announce that we are about to take another major step forward with the introduction of an online portal that will accept applications for trade and business licenses. The first iteration of this system will accept grant applications with the functionality to accept renewal applications to be developed later this year. Looking further ahead, this online platform can then be expanded to include the department's other licensing functions, such as or including tobacco and liquor licenses. Madam Speaker, local businesses have requested a system that would improve efficiency, particularly with turnaround times for some time. and that is the system we have built. Obviously, 24/7 online access with the ability to submit payments from home, an office, or anywhere in the world is a significant convenience that further gives Cayman the business advantages that modern countries enjoy. As an extra benefit to local businesses, there are no plans to charge additional fees for this online service. That said, the Department of Commerce and Investment expects reduced costs for paper and printing and the elimination of the duplication in data entry. For data security, I'll mention two significant features. First, users must establish a system account before they can take advantage of the service. Second, we've incorporated the latest web security features into the new online portal to keep data secure. As part of these features, it's worth noting that credit card payments will be processed by a well-known clearinghouse that is fully PCI compliant, PCI being a security standard that is mandatory for all those that process credit card transactions. The testing of the new online system is expected to be completed in April with a general rollout to the public in May. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
If I could have the indulgence of the House for the Honourable Minister of Planning, who's making the next statement. The Chair will recognize the Honourable Minister for Planning, who will make the third and final government statement for the day.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I believe that I am the only minister left to do my statements on the reallocation of funds.
A privilege afforded to the senior member of government.
So, thank you very much for allowing me to read these. Madam Speaker, the first one is a statement as to the reasons why the Ministry of Planning, Lands, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure was able to reallocate funds from and within its 2014-15 budget. During the 2014-15 fiscal year, the ministry required additional funds for the appropriation captioned EA 138, Cayman Islands Environmental Center. During that fiscal year, the ministry was faced with an urgent need to replace the air conditioning system at the Cayman Islands Environmental Center. And just so that everybody will know where we're talking about, Madam Speaker, that is what was formerly known as the Marco Giglioli building, where the Department of Environment is housed. Based on the tender exercise for the AC project, the ministry had an appropriation of $375,000 from EA 138. However, the winning tender was $467,000, so an additional $92,000 was required. The ministry was able to identify savings that was equivalent to the $92,000 sought from farm roads from the ministry's other appropriations of EA 37 farm roads. Madam Speaker, the ministry received a request from the Cayman Islands Agricultural Society seeking
Ministry assistance with the importation of livestock in the amount of $150,000 to cover the cost of shipping, quarantine, and veterinarian services. The ministry was able to identify savings to assist the agriculture sector in trying to keep up with the demands for local beef. Savings were identified from various output groups: mpta2, Ministerial Services; PWD 25, Project, Management of Major Projects; PLN 33, Preparation and Publication of Statistical Reports; LSU 3, the Land Registry Records; and VLT 9, Licensing of Drivers and Vehicles. The saving in the amount of $150,000 was reallocated to TP 74, Agricultural Services Assistance in respect to importation of livestock. So with ministry's continued support for the agricultural sector and to assist the market vendors, the ministry agreed to partner with the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism, and Transport to the redevelopment of the market at the cricket grounds. The Ministry of District Admin agreed to assist with the labor and other associated costs of construction, with the understanding that they would be reimbursed. So a reduction of $25,000 was made to the appropriation of EA 36, the Georgetown Revitalization Project, to reimburse TP 67 funding earmarked for the Flowers Sea Swim from the Ministry of District Administration. Madam Speaker, during that same year, the Ministry of Planning required additional funds for the appropriation captioned Budget EA9 Gazetted Claims. Executive Asset 9, EA9 Gazetted Claims, is under the Ministry of Planning. The funds were used for the payment of compensation claims submitted by affected landowners under the provisions of the road law as a result of road schemes undertaken by the National Roads Authority. So as a result, an increase of $2 million to the EA9 Gazetted Claims appropriation and a decrease of $2 million to the EA 36 Georgetown Revitalization appropriation. Madam Speaker, during the same 2014-15 year, the ministry had a number of capital expenditure amounts approved in the 14-15 budget exercise. And as the year progressed, the ministry identified savings from various capital allocations. In January of 2015, Cabinet approved the reallocation of $2 million from EA 36, miscellaneous road surface upgrades, to EA 9, land purchase gazetted claims. Cabinet Paper Rate 95 of 15, item 2025, meeting number 75 of the year 2015. This was to accommodate an anticipated compensation liability for 3 new road schemes in Georgetown during this financial year, meaning 14-15. In practice, only a few new claims have been submitted to date, resulting in only $725,000 having been spent. $1 million of the surplus EA9 funds can be reallocated to Cayman Airways at the request of the Ministry of District Admin. So it is important to note, Madam Speaker, that the Ministry was not proposing to overspend its allocation, nor were we seeking additional capital funds, but rather the Ministry sought Cabinet's approval to reallocate approved funds within the Ministry and to the Ministry of District Administration. These are the amounts reallocated. A, reallocation of funds in the amount of $1 million to be transferred from EA9 to EI1, Cayman Airways. Reallocation of funds in the amount of $275,000 to be transferred from EA9, and EA9 being land purchase, gazetted claims, to EA36, miscellaneous road surface upgrades. Reallocation of funds in the amount of $50,000 from EA78, which is the GOAP 1, and $40,000 from EA37 farm roads to be transferred to EI71. Madam Speaker, the details of the reallocation of funds from and within the ministry that required additional funding can be found in the 2014-15 supplementary annual plan and estimates, which were recently tabled in the House by the Honourable Minister for Finance. Madam Speaker, the next one is for the 2015-16 fiscal year. During the 15-16 financial year, the ministry required additional funds of $30,000 for the appropriation captioned TP76, Assistance for Infrastructure Development. Madam Speaker, these funds were utilized for the sponsorship of the Harbor Nights program, a Georgetown revitalization initiative geared at encouraging residents and businesses to bring life into the central downtown area after regular business hours. It was also used to provide additional assistance to farmers with the opening of the farmers market at the cricket grounds. These monies were found from savings within the ministry's budget appropriation captioned TP74, Assistance in Respect to Importation of Livestock. Madam Speaker, the ministry also reallocated funds for the purchase of Block 38B, Parcel 290, for the use of the structure as a residential care facility under the Department of Children and Family Services. This reallocation of $240,000 was taken from the Ministry of Community Affairs, Youth and Sports budget appropriation EI54, Equity Investment to Purchase Entity Assets, and to be transferred to the ministry's budget appropriation EA4, which is land purchase. The ministry also reallocated $1.9 million from the ministry's budget appropriation EA142, Georgetown Revitalization, and transferred to the ministry's budget EA9, which is land purchases, gazetted claims, to compensate those landowners affected by the widening of the Linford-Pearson Highway project. The ministry also transferred monies in June of this year for several key projects. These were, Madam Speaker, the reallocation of $1,590,369 to be taken from the budget appropriation EA142 and transferred to budget appropriation EA9 and utilized for the compensation to dispossessed landowners affected by the expansion of the Linford-Pearson Highway project. The reallocation of $275,000 was taken from Ministry Budget Appropriation EA142 and transferred to EA36, Miscellaneous Road Surface Upgrades. Madam Speaker, this was necessary to regularize an overspend by the NRA for a number of works, including the Midland Acres restoration of the road surface and the Health Services Authority main parking lot. As we all can attest to, the HSA's parking lot was in serious disrepair and the government felt that the repair was a priority. Also, Madam Speaker, the reallocation of $210,000 from the Ministry Budget Appropriation EA 78 and transferred to the Ministry Budget Appropriation EI 71 for the resurfacing of the PWD NRA compound. There was also the reallocation of $127,000 from the Ministry's Budget Appropriation EA 142, transferred to a new EA under the portfolio of the Civil Service to construct the extension to the car park here at the Legislative Assembly. And we see where that has started. And I guess by the time we get our little derrieres out of here, they'll finish the job. Madam Speaker, the reallocation of $41,000 from Ministry's Budget Appropriation EA 37 Farm Roads and transferred to the Ministry of Plahe Budget Appropriation TP 76, which is Assistance for Infrastructure Development. This was used to locate a modular building at the market at the cricket grounds for the farmers to use as a management office, and also, Madam Speaker, to be used as a sort of agriculture museum type thing. And the reallocation of $35,000 taken from the ministry's budget appropriation EA 142 and transferred to EI 71 to purchase a new forklift for the Department of Agriculture for their feed store in order to be able to stock their bags of feed high enough to utilize the square footage of the building that is there. Madam Speaker, Ministry allocation EA4 land purchase was increased by US $5,439,237.87 from the EPF to facilitate the purchase of the Smith Cove Barcadere, which is a historic, picturesque beachfront national beauty spot. And members will recall this was the additional property going to the north from the property that government already owned at the Smith Cove Barcadere. Funds in the amount of $17,775.50 were allocated to the management of Crown property, known as the former John Silver's Inn, which is under the temporary housing unit. Madam Speaker, this was done to transfer to the Ministry of Community Affairs, which is responsible for the Department of Children and Family Services. And the details of the reallocation of those funds for the 15-16 year can be found in the supplementary annual plan for 2015-16, which was recently tabled in this meeting of the Legislative Assembly by the Ministry of Finance. And finally, Madam Speaker, for this year, which is still ongoing, during this 16-17 fiscal year to date, we required appropriation changes on a number of occasions as follows. Firstly, in August of 2016, the ministry received an increased allocation in supplementary funding of $307,950, which was placed in a new TP appropriation entitled ex gratia payments to facilitate the compensation payments to owners of displaced residential properties impacted by the ongoing project to widen the Linford-Pearson Highway. This appropriation was topped up by an additional $243,553 approved by Cabinet in February of this year on the completion of the tender exercise for the construction of the replacement houses. Madam Speaker, there was also an increase approved by Cabinet for the EA 36 miscellaneous road surface programs. In 2015-16, the ministry had instructed the NRA to repave the Georgetown Hospital car park at a cost of $142,668.75. The NRA, meanwhile, had widened Smith Road, taking land from the HSA in order to do so, incurring a roads law compensation liability of $148,190. Cabinet agreed to set one off against the other, with the balance to be paid to the HSA. Madam Speaker, the ministry was advised to achieve this by reallocating the $142,668.75 from EA9 land purchase over to EA36 miscellaneous road surface upgrades. The next occasion in this current cycle requiring the reallocation of funds related to a request from the Attorney General's Chambers and the Portfolio of Legal Affairs made to the Facilities Management section to construct additional offices in the Government Admin Building at a cost of $75,000. As the ministry had no funding allocated for this unexpected request, funding was approved by the Honorable Attorney General's Chambers and the Portfolio of Legal Affairs. So, $75,000 was transferred from appropriation equity injection Portfolio of Legal Affairs to Plahe appropriation EA 78 Government Office Accommodation Project. Finally, Madam Speaker, the government had a number of priority projects that required funding, such as the land for the Spots Public Beach Parking, a generator for the East End Primary School, the Cowood Beach Project, and the new West Bay Cemetery Project. Madam Speaker, given that the Ministry of Community Affairs, Youth and Sport did not foresee utilizing some funds in their budget, we agreed to collaborate with them to assist in funding these projects. And so, as a result, we reduced the Ministry of Community Affairs appropriation EI 54 equity investment to purchase entity assets by $1.2 million and reduced the appropriation EI 71 entity investment by $700,000 and then transferred, that is, increased the budget appropriation EA 142 Georgetown revitalization by $850,000 and then increased EA 4 land purchases by $300,000 and then reallocated $41,000 from PAH 8 Management of Special Projects to TP 76 Assistance for Infrastructure Development. And lastly, we created a new executive asset for minor district works for the ministry, thereby increasing Ministry of Plahe's appropriation 16-17 budget by $750,000. So, Madam Speaker, the details of the reallocation of all of these funds that I have just spoken to can be found in the 2016-17 Supplementary Annual Plan and Estimates, which were recently tabled in the Legislative Assembly by the Minister of Finance. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Personal explanations.
I recognize the honourable member from the District of Northside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to respond to the headline in Friday, March the 24th. Compass Conservation Council approves EIAs. This preposterous, idiosyncratic, and idiopathic proposal by the Department of the Environment and the unjustified, unrealistic, and irrational acceptance by the National Conservation Council of such a proposal that the 2 farm roads and the highway extension to Driftwood Village need EIAs before gazettal is beyond belief and any form of rational thinking. This proposal represents an extremely warped interpretation of understanding of the purpose of the roads. To justify or suggest that the 2 farm roads should have an EIA because the NRA has not done traffic studies or the planning department done studies to project developmental potential is to ignore the purpose of a farm road. A farm road is not designed or justified on its impact, either positive or negative, on traffic patterns or demands. It is being built to give farmers motor vehicle access to their farms. Really? The Department of Environment and the National Conservation Council believe we should be concerned about traffic flows and traffic jams on a farm road? Madam Speaker, it is truly disappointing and concerning, but maybe an explanation of how out of touch the Department of Environment and the National Conservation Council is if they have not heard and seen any of the 10-year-long public discussion of these 2 farm roads by the Agricultural Society, the farmers, the Northside District Council, and myself. Madam Speaker, to justify an EIA on their concern that the route of the farm roads is through land zoned for agriculture is outside normal rational thinking and analysis. Really? What do they understand agricultural zone to mean? The route of these 2 farm roads is the result of much deliberations, time, and knowledge by the farmers and other landowners who I can assure the public know the topography of the route better than any persons employed by the Department of Environment or those who sit on the National Conservation Council. I wonder how many of them know the height of the cliff ridge that divides Parts Nest, or what is the size of Coolidge grass piece in Pawpaw Path, or even where these are located. Madam Speaker, the 73 landowners who have been involved in the 10-year deliberations and the decisions of where these farm roads are proposed have all signed a petition to the government requesting the gazettal of these farm roads. They have all further agreed to each give up 15 feet of land for free to provide a 30-foot road. These farmers and landowners have proposed the route of the roads to preserve the most arable land while locating the roads on the cliff, something that is obviously foreign to the DOE and the NCC. The route of these roads, or their need, was not dreamed up by Ezra Miller while sleeping in his hammock. Madam Speaker, these farm roads in no way impact the swamp, not usually considered by farmers in Northside as good for farming, since they are not growing rice. These farm roads are proposed to pass through an area zoned for agriculture. Surprise, surprise. You mean to tell me the DOE and the NCC does not see, understand, or appreciate the connection between farm roads and agriculture? Maybe they would be more supportive if they were proposed for hotel resort zones. I would encourage the Minister of Agriculture to offer the Minister of Environment to have the Planning Department conduct a day-long seminar for the Department of the Environment, the National Conservation Council, to explain that agricultural zones have a direct link to farming. Really? Really? They're going to object to farm roads being in the agricultural zone. Next, I guess, they will object to planes landing on a runway or cars driving on the highways. Madam Speaker, they may have some minor reasons to be concerned by the highway going through the swamp. Yes, Madam Speaker, I use the word swamp instead of their more scientific or environmental sounding central mangrove wetlands. Because, Madam Speaker, this area is the same as the swamp that was filled in to develop the 7 Mile Beach area. It is only after you cross Prospect and get to poor people land that swamps become wetlands. The owners of swamp on the Western Peninsula were all allowed to extract the economic development potential of their swamp by filling it. But now that it is poor people land in Northside and Bordentown, it has been renamed wetlands and cannot be developed. The great scientist who was discovered by chance by the wife of a former governor raking up turtle grass in East End, who no doubt helped her develop the necessary scientific paper to prove that the introduction of the scent of horse effluents would be a great addition to the ambience of 7 Mile Beach, and in particular Government House, has produced evidence that freshwater runoff from this swamp carries all the nutrients necessary for embryonic marine life in the North Sound. Madam Speaker, I want us to think about that scientific deduction. Fresh water improving saltwater marine life. How oxymoronic can these people get? Now, Madam Speaker, we the people who live in this area and frequent the Little Sound know that when that yellow fresh water comes into the area after heavy rains, all marine life leaves for the simple reason marine life does not like fresh water. Now, Madam Speaker, some years ago, this great scientist presented some figures in a speech to the Rotary Club justifying the scientific need for the preservation of this swamp. Given the average annual rainfall in Grand Cayman, and assuming there was no absorption to fill the swamp before runoff, and no loss through evaporation, this swamp would have to be bigger than the state of Florida to produce the millions of gallons of runoff he presented. The great scientific way he achieved his figures was by hanging a yellow construction bucket in a tree in the swamp for a few days to see how much water it collected from the rains. Then, Madam Speaker, there is also the Department of Environment scientific contention that this swamp is responsible for rainfall on Grand Cayman. Now, Madam Speaker, the records of rainfall will show that the lowest annual rainfall was in 1958. Trust me, Madam Speaker, we had plenty of swamp in Cayman at that time. You do, who do, and I do, scientific and environmental bull. Madam Speaker, most Caymanians know that the rainfall in the Cayman Islands is due to passing weather systems, as each of the 3 islands is too small to produce its own weather system. How can it be scientifically and environmentally correct to let swampland in Georgetown and West Bay be converted for development by filling it, as long as they buy some of the same swamp located in Northside for the DOE and the NCC to preserve. It would also be interesting to know how they scientifically determined there are only 1,500 whistling ducks in the swamp. Hope it was not the same method used to count parrots some years ago. Yes, Madam Speaker, I think we could use a study to determine how deep and how wide the canal we should dig beside this proposed highway extension to get the fill, and how many openings in the canal should have to the Little Sound to turn this swamp into the Fort Lauderdale of Grand Cayman and let the landowners of this swamp get their maximum economic return through development of this swamp. Madam Speaker, I encourage, beg, and plead with, as well as pray, that the minister responsible for roads will get the support from his fellow cabinet ministers to gazette these 3 roads before he demits office. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the 5th elected member from Georgetown for a personal statement.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to give a personal statement. Madam Speaker, as we approach the 12th hour of this final sitting of this session of 2013 to 17, and given all the controversy and media speculation surrounding the Legal Practitioners Bill 2016, I rise to inform this august body and the people of this country that, as it is clear that the motion submitted by the elected member for East End and seconded by Winston Connolly, the 5th elected member from Georgetown, private member's motion number 17 of 2017, will not be allowed to be heard. We, certain members of the opposition, have felt it necessary to write to Her Excellency the Governor. We've appealed to Her Excellency to exercise her authority under the Commissioners of Inquiry law to issue a commission of inquiry to conduct an independent inquiry into the circumstances relating to the said bill, its origin and process from which it was derived, and in connection therewith, the allegations to which the said motion makes mention, and the letters from Caymanian attorneys speaking about discrimination in the legal profession, in order to determine whether there has been a failure or breach of duty by any department or public official to properly investigate any such alleged breaches of the immigration law, the legal practitioners law, and consequent thereto, whether any offenses under the penal code have been made out. I would therefore seek your leave to table the letter of request to the Governor.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is sent to the Governor. Madam Speaker, you should have a copy of the letter. Her Excellency, the Governor, the Honorable Helen Kilpatrick, Governor of the Cayman Islands, Government Administration Building, Grand Cayman, Cayman Islands, 27th of March, 2017. Your Excellency, Commission of Inquiry pursuant to Commissions of Inquiry Law, 1997 revision. We write to urge you to consider issuing a Commission of Inquiry pursuant to the powers vested in you by the Commissions of Inquiry Law, 1997 revision. to inquire into the alleged activities by a number of Cayman Islands law firms and members of the Caymanian Bar Association and the Cayman Islands Law Society, so as to determine whether there has been a failure or breach of duty by any department, statutory authority, or person or persons in public office to investigate and/or prosecute or bring any other appropriate enforcement or other proceedings in respect of the various allegations of discrimination and innumerable instances of apparent breach of the immigration law and regulations, the Legal Practitioners Law 2015 revision, and or Section 321 of the Penal Code, as read with Section 4 of the said code. This request has become necessary since, despite the manifold complaints that have now been made from a wide cross-section of the legal profession to various members of the Legislative Assembly and other public officials, including the Chief Justice, and despite open public condemnation by certain members of the bar, including by way of a speech delivered by a learned senior member of the bar during a grand court opening address, these activities have gone on seemingly unabated and uncontested, and to continue to leave these matters unaddressed would seem to be damaging to the public welfare. This situation has been exacerbated by all of the controversy surrounding the ongoing debate on the Legal Practitioners Bill 2016, its origin and the process from which it was derived, and particularly so in light of the fact that at least one member of the current cabinet, namely the Honorable Wayne Panton, may be implicated by virtue of the fact that he is a former managing partner of one of the firms that engage in the activities which give rise to these allegations. To the extent that at least one minister of cabinet may be viewed by the public as being himself implicated or involved in such activities, and particularly as he is the proposer of the Legal Practitioners Bill 2016, and given that it has been recently revealed in the Legislative Assembly that this bill was in fact drafted and paid for by an external draftsperson hired by either the Cayman Law Society and or some of its members, who have in fact themselves been, together with the said minister, aggressively promoting the said bill, we would urge you to direct that the requested commission of inquiry should also specifically determine whether the said minister and any other member or members of cabinet acted either in dereliction of their duties or in conflict of any interest they may have, whether the same be pecuniary or otherwise, as to allow such allegations to go unanswered without any form of independent investigation or inquiry would be, in our humble view, contrary to the welfare and interests of the public of these islands. Acting on the complaints and the evidence that we have seen and heard from many members of the local bar, and based on professional advice in that regard, Member Arden McLean and Member Winston Connolly also have filed a standing private member's motion, number 17 of 2016-2017, which the government has refused to hear. As no motions other than government motions have been heard in this session of the Legislative Assembly for the past 4 Thursdays, traditionally private members' motion day. It is therefore clear that the government is not willing to allow any debate on this motion, and given that the Legislative Assembly will be dissolved on Tuesday, there is no doubt that these allegations will be left unanswered and lingering in the minds of many members of the public. And the media will no doubt thereby be permitted to continue to proffer their unqualified opinions as to the veracity and validity of the contents of the motion. The motion raises serious allegations regarding the apparent circumvention of the Immigration Law 2015 revision and Section 10 of the Legal Practitioners Law 2015 revision, as well as apparent conspiracy offenses under Section 322 of the Penal Code 2015 revision, circumvent those two former laws, none of which alleged offenses appear to have ever been investigated by or at the instance of the Director of Public Prosecutions or the Attorney General. Nonetheless, during recent debate in the LA, when the issue of a potential pecuniary interest was raised by the opposition
Madam Speaker,
as against.
just,
I recognize Honorable
just,
Attorney General.
just a
Please
point
state
of
your point
order.
of order.
Neither the Attorney General or the DPP is an investigative agency. Neither the DPP's officer or the
This is a point of clarification.
we don't investigate offenses. Member might want to rephrase his allegation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thanks.
Honorable Member, can you just reread that
Yeah.
statement, please?
I'll read from the start of the sentence, Madam Speaker, but this is a letter that has already been sent. The motion raises serious allegations regarding the apparent circumvention of the Immigration Law 2015 revision and Section 10 of the Legal Practitioners Law 2015 revision, as well as apparent conspiracy offenses under Section 322 of the Penal Code 2015 revision to circumvent those two former laws, none of which alleged offenses appear to have ever been investigated by or at the instance of the Director of Public Prosecutions or the Attorney General.
Yes, so the letter, Honorable Attorney General, he's referring to the contents of the letter that has apparently been sent to Her Excellency the Governor, and obviously Her Excellency the Governor, upon receipt, and your good officers can respond thereto. I said it's not a instant debate where he's making an allegation within the chamber. He's just laying a document. So both parties will have an opportunity to so reply in that forum. Honorable Member, please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Nonetheless, during recent debate in the LA, when the issue of a potential pecuniary interest was raised by the opposition as against Minister Panton, the Honorable Attorney General proffered an opinion on the floor of the House that no such direct pecuniary interest existed. And to support that position, the learned Honorable Attorney General merely sought to rely on the statement made by the relevant minister and an opinion of the minister's counsel, which opinion was not tabled, nor has the same been shared with the opposition members. It is the opposition's contention that notwithstanding such an opinion by the Honorable Attorney General, there is an apparent conflict of interest suffered by the minister, and whether the same actually exists, and if the same is direct or indirect, could only be properly determined by an independent investigation, as it is clear that the Honorable Attorney General is not prepared to make such inquiry. We are cognizant that at common law, the rule against bias has been expressed repeatedly and resounding as being a rule against the appearance of bias rather than a rule against actual bias, emphasis supplied. In light of the Honorable Attorney General's position on the issue of Minister Panton's pecuniary interest, we sought and obtained an independent legal opinion from learned UK Queen's Counsel Paul Garlick of 2 Plowden Buildings, Temple, London, who has opined inter alia that, based on the relevant provisions of the Penal Code and Legal Practitioners Law 2015 revision, there is a prima facie case made out in respect of the alleged offenses which should be investigated and answered. The opinion confirms the validity of the offenses referred to in Motion 17 of 2017, and in particular, Section 322 of the Penal Code 2015 revision offenses, by partners and principals and other participating persons in law firms. Duty now constrains us to seek a full inquiry rather than leave these serious matters unaddressed. The people of this country deserve to have the allegations raised properly investigated and answered, and the many brave lawyers who came forward to speak about the discrimination, some signing their names, others chose to be anonymous, should have their say in a protected environment without fear of reprisal or oppression in their own country. This would be the additional value of having an independent commission of inquiry. The Caymanian Bar Association, in a letter to Acting Chief Immigration Officer Department of Immigration, Mr. Bruce Smith, see schedule. The Caymanian Bar Association President, Mr. Abraham Thoppel, on 23rd of June 2015 wrote, "The Caymanian Bar Association is charged in substantial part with seeking to protect the interests of Caymanians within the legal profession of the Cayman Islands." He went on to inquire about self-employed work permits for lawyers who are not Caymanian under Section 46 of the Immigration Law 2014 revision, Section 24J, and Sections 46E of the Immigration Law. Mr. Thoppel also raised the issue of the practice of foreign law in the Cayman Islands, work permits for lawyers with less than 3 years post-qualification experience, PQE, work permit fees for owners for firms under the Immigration Regulations 2014 revision. The letter cited serious ongoing breaches of the laws of the Cayman Islands, particularly the immigration law and the trade and business licensing law, and their regulations, which not only serve to deprive the government of substantial revenue, but also places persons at unfair competitive advantage relative to those firms who are paying the highest fee in respect of those expatriate owner/practitioners within their organizations. He closed his letter by asking for clarification of the position and confirmation of consistent application of the requirements in view of any findings would be greatly appreciated. To date, Your Excellency, this powerful letter, carbon copied to the Premier, the Honorable Alden McLaughlin, the Honorable Tara Rivers, myself, the Honorable Attorney General, the Secretary of the Work Permit Board, and the Secretary of the Business Staffing Plan Board, has not been answered. Prior to that letter, Mr. Ian Paget Brown, Chairman of the Law Reform Commission, on 16th of January 2013, in his address at the opening of the Grand Court, see schedule, spoke to the following: the issue of amending the legal practitioner's law to enable practicing certificates to be issued to non-residents working in law firms abroad in 2007. He stated that when he was asked at a cabinet meeting about what impact he believed allowing non-residents to be admitted would have on the prospects of young Caymanians, his response was they would be affected by any amendment to the legal practitioner's law that widened the class of people who could become Caymanian attorneys, because there would be less incentive for law firms to hire and train Caymanians to staff the foreign offices that would be needed to comply with the existing law. Mr. Paget Brown went on to say that firms were able to circumvent prior to and after 2002 Cayman Islands immigration laws and regulations by employing persons outside of the islands who did not have practicing certificates but were nevertheless held out as entitled to advise on issues of Cayman Islands law. His calculation, based on the statistics provided by the Cayman Islands Law Society at the time, was that there were 180
Madam
attorneys.
Speaker, a point of,
Honorable Premier, do you have a point of order?
yes, Madam Speaker.
Please proceed.
Madam Speaker, I've sat there debating in my head whether or not to raise this issue and decided to let it go for a while. But, Madam Speaker, the clear provisions of Standing Order 31 are that a member may make a personal explanation, although there is no question before the House, but no controversial matter may be included in the explanation, nor may debate arise thereupon. We are, Madam Speaker, into extremely controversial grounds. The Attorney General and his advice to this House has been challenged. Grave allegations have been made again about the Minister of Financial Services. We are in very dangerous territory. This is not a personal explanation. This is a debate on a motion which has not yet come before the House. And the member should not be allowed to continue in this vein, in my respectful view.
Honorable Premier, the personal statement is a one-page document, and what it's referring to is a letter that he's informing the House and the public that has already been sent to Her Excellency the Governor, which I've permitted based on the personal statement not having contained what you just alleged that it contained. And that's the reason why I allowed it to go. It's just an information letter which has already been sent, and it's not been sent in secret. As I discussed it with the member, he wanted it for the whole country to hear. But this in itself was what I gave approval on with the attachment. Member, please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. His calculation, based on the statistics provided by the Cayman Islands Law Society at the time, was that there were 180 attorneys working outside the islands as Caymanian attorneys were generating US $108 billion in fees annually, or a staggering US $1.8 billion over 10 years. He, like the Caymanian Bar Association, cited significant loss of revenue to the Cayman Islands government, and by extension to the Cayman Islands people. Whilst there are over 700 lawyers practicing in the Cayman Islands, he said that in 2013, evidence showed that 10 firms with operations in Cayman also have a presence in offshore jurisdictions. They employ over 1,300 lawyers. More importantly, Paget Brown detailed in his address discrimination. He said, "It is evident that many in this community consider the social injustice experienced by some of their best and brightest compatriots even more troubling than the outsourcing issue. What is very troubling as a politician and representative of the Caymanian people is that what he went on to say. The Caymanian may well ask herself what is or was the point of devoting years to educating herself only to find out that there is no real opportunity to pursue the career she has invested so much effort and made such personal sacrifice to prepare for. How can this situation be right, where there are so many non-Caymanians practicing Cayman Islands law without being admitted as Cayman Islands attorneys?" He went on to lay out that was urgently needed to properly prepare the Caymanian lawyers for advancement to equity partnership, namely law school scholarships, articles of clerkship, hiring opportunities, equitable distribution of billable work, marketing and networking exposure, attendance and contribution to conferences, being mentored, mentoring and training others, continuing legal education, work experience overseas, and preparation for and participating in leadership and ownership of offshore and local firms. It is lamentable that the legal profession has made it necessary to consider some sort of affirmative action instead of creating reasonable opportunities for Caymanians to share in the prosperity that this jurisdiction has offered so many expatriates over the last 4 decades. The Honorable Premier, in his speech to the Legislative Assembly, has said he agrees that it is time for some form of affirmative action. Your Excellency, Paget Brown continued by stating, "The evidence shows that Caymanians are deliberately being marginalized in the workplace, denied fair opportunities to advance, have been instructed on occasions about how to vote at Caymanian Bar Association elections, told that to be a team player, they must allow the status quo to continue uninterrupted, used as pawns to secure status grants and permanent residence, and only the Caymanian has once the Caymanian has outlived her usefulness in securing these grants, they are unfairly and constructively dismissed." And these are all quotes, Madam Speaker. This isn't anything that I'm writing from a personal opinion. Mr. Paget Brown said that there are allegations that firms may have been guilty of, 1, filing misleading affidavits, qualifications, residence, experience, character with the court, misleading the Trade and Business Board as to Caymanian participation and efforts to secure it, failing to report Caymanian applicants, misleading the authorities as to the nature of experience and qualifications as to both expatriate and local applicants, publishing misleading advertisements so as to seek to avoid attracting qualified local applicants, giving misleading description of the positions held by Caymanians and expatriates for regulatory advantage, concealing remuneration for regulatory advantage, failing to make applications for promotion/redesignation, and disingenuous about the nature and extent of training, taking on article clerks, but then not offering employment opportunities and in-house training programs that are not offered to Caymanians. Despite that fact that this statement was made by Mr. Paget Brown at the Grand Court opening in 2013, to date, has been no formal response by the Cayman Islands government, the Cayman Islands Law Society, the Caymanian Bar Association, or the courts to these serious allegations by the Learned Queen's Council. Nevertheless, we are aware that many members of the Caymanian community, particularly those in the legal profession, continue to voice complaints that echo all those things which Mr. Paget Brown outlined in his speech. We have noted, sadly, on many occasions that Caymanians who complain bitterly about their state of affairs and lack of progress in the legal profession express fear of reprisal and further oppression from these firms and their perceived allies in government. The general view seems to be that there is no legal or political recourse available to these disenfranchised and outraged Caymanians. This situation cannot be allowed to fester until it results in serious unrest. Such unrest may seem remote now, but I assure you it has and will continue to be considered by many a Caymanian who has been and continues to be deprived of his right to earn a place and a living in his chosen career in his country. Your Excellency, the immigration law contains all the necessary provisions for ensuring that this sad state of affairs described by Mr. Paget Brown QC would not prevail. Yet, for reasons that are yet to be determined, those provisions have been flagrantly breached and or simply have not been followed by many of the large law firms, and yet, again for inexplicable reasons, have not enforced by the Immigration Department. Persons who were Caymanian when they did their articles appear to have been left behind, with only one reaching equity partnership status in almost 20 years. As a result of the glaring inequities that exist in the legal profession, myself and opposition colleagues have proposed and still maintain that the regime set out in the Trade and Business Licensing Law and Local Companies Control Law should apply and be expanded to any entity practicing Cayman Islands law. Caymanian lawyers cannot and should not be disenfranchised by those who would choose to circumvent the general laws of the Cayman Islands and simply wait until persons become Caymanian to promote them. This was and is not the intention or the letter of our laws. The most sensitive issue is, of course, the progression of Caymanian attorneys. That is to say, those schooled here and trained here. There is both a political and public policy consideration at play here. To our minds, the public and the legislature expect to see qualified and capable Caymanians trained and promoted, in fact, preferred, not just treated equally. The current level of representation of Caymanians at senior levels in the legal firms after 40 years of development of legal practice in the Cayman Islands is not the desired results of the drafters of our legislation. The statistics currently being quoted do not represent the progression of Caymanians if the majority started out as work permit holders. This cannot be what was intended. The ratios would be even worse if partners in foreign offices that are represented as practicing Cayman law were included. Most of the general public and political representatives of the people are of the opinion that the limited representations of Caymanians at senior levels in Cayman Islands law firms is reflective of the fact that law firms in Cayman have not promoted the interest of Caymanian attorneys, which position is frequently and understandably contrasted with the accounting firms. Almost all countries have immigration laws that are designed to protect the interests of nationals. Such a legislation is not specific to Cayman. The provisions of the immigration law/regulations intended to protect the interests of Caymanians do not read as being limited to all things being equal, the Caymanian candidate should be given the job. The circumvention of the laws, especially when Cayman is far less restrictive than certain other jurisdictions regarding the appointment of foreign nationals as partners. However, the intention is to protect/prefer the interest of Caymanians, in which the legal profession is no different from any other category of employment. I would direct you to Section 44(1) of the Immigration Law 2015 revision, specifically Section 44(2)(c), and Section 51. These sections continue to be breached to the detriment of Caymanian attorneys and their training and progression to management/ownership in Cayman Islands law firms. The Immigration Regulations 2016 revision, in particular Regulation 4.1 and 2, Regulation 6.1, and Schedule 3, are also relevant to this request. In debates in the Legislative Assembly recently, of which you are no doubt aware, further evidence of this was presented by the opposition members in their contributions and tabled in some instances, read aloud on the floor of the Legislative Assembly, which corroborated these earlier allegations and put those brave enough to come forward in serious risk of being blackballed from the legal profession because they have highlighted the same discrimination that Mr. Paget Brown spoke about 4 years earlier and have put Caymanian faces to it. Other lawyers have come forward anonymously as well. This was incredibly brave, as lawyers who dared speak out before have suffered long-lasting and permanent career damage. As a country, we cannot condone this sort of behavior. We have enclosed all letters we received in the schedules below. We have also included a letter to the Lord Chief Justice dated 17th February 2017 from a young Caymanian attorney bringing two matters to his lordship's attention as regulator of the legal profession, as well as the Honorable Chief Justice's response. The attorney spoke in particular to 1, the exemption under the bill from the Local Companies Control Law 2015 revision, and 2, foreign practicing certificates. His letter was very compelling, but largely ignored by the government and the Honorable Attorney General, who take a contrary position and have stated this publicly on the floor of the Legislative Assembly. It was, however, compelling enough for the Honorable Chief Justice, who responded on the 21st of February 2017, saying it raises very important concerns which should be considered by the legislature, and inviting the lawyer to forward his response to the legislature's attention. Your Excellency, by your own public utterances, you abhor discrimination of any kind. The Right Honorable Baroness Annaly, in her visit to the Cayman Islands Legislative Assembly on 4th October 2016, also stressed equal rights for all and spoke about legal and economic imperatives to end continued discrimination, albeit in a different context. By extension, we truly believe, based on all the evidence received, that discrimination against Caymanian attorneys is real in the Cayman Islands legal fraternity. Unless there is intervention by the government and the Legislative Assembly, it will continue. Baroness Annaly said, evidence has shown it is only when countries are able to draw on all their available talents and make all their citizens feel included that they can fulfill their true potential. We know you feel the same way and beseech you to exercise your powers under the Commission of Inquiry Law to issue the commission to call witnesses before you, including Caymanian lawyers and law firm equity partners, the Cayman Islands Law Society, and the Caymanian Bar Association, and other relevant parties to determine whether the issues raised are in fact valid issues and whether some protections can be put in place for these persons coming forward, and some recommendations made regarding the enforcement of the immigration and other laws. This is a matter of great public concern, essential for the public welfare, and if substantiated, has affected and will continue to affect generations of Caymanian attorneys, their families, the economy of the Cayman Islands, and the Caymanian dream. We have also invited the Minister of Education, Employment, and Gender Affairs to look further into some of the gender issues raised by Mrs. Anagabo in her letter to the Honorable Premier regarding her experiences. At the very least, 2 issues need to be investigated. 1, whilst on maternity leave, she subsequently had to rebuild her practice, which had been reallocated amongst other partners and associates during her absence. And 2, advancing numerous foreign attorneys, not having regard to the effect that such promotion or redesignation would have on the opportunity for advancement to that level of qualified Caymanians already engaged in the same profession, as required by Section 51B of the immigration law. The writer raises other issues under Sections 42 and 44.5 of the immigration law and Regulations 4.1 of the immigration regulations, as well as Schedule 3.3 of the immigration regulations, which were raised by the Caymanian Bar Association. Your Excellency, We have attached letters and reports from the Caymanian Bar Association in the past that corroborate the immigration law breaches allegations and trust that this will be sufficient to convince you that at the very least an inquiry should be commenced to consider these issues further. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker,
Honorable Attorney General.
I seek your guidance on certainly one aspect of Mr. Connolly's statement. Elected member for Georgetown, I'm sorry. Can't debate his statement. But he has read into the record a factual inaccuracy, and I seek your guidance as to how the record should be corrected. He has read in a letter to the governor that I had said that the Minister of Financial Services has no pecuniary interest in the matter. I said no such thing. But that is now found part of the record of this House. And I seek your guidance as to how that should be corrected.
Without going into the contravention of ensuing a debate from a personal statement, I would ask you to quote verbatim page, date, and the words of what the Hansard said. It's an unedited Hansard? Or the edited version you're referring to?
I think it's unedited, Madam Speaker, but I'm sure we can, if necessary, get the edited version. But I'm not sure how he could have forgot, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Attorney General,
Yeah?
I've given you permission to read verbatim and state the date. So, as tempting as it is, please,
8 of March.
you can also apply for a personal statement or make a government statement if
Could I just
need
scribble it?
be. Please advise the Hansard, Madam Clerk, that if a member requests, the protocol is that whichever person's debate is being requested should get a copy as well.
Madam Speaker, is the Hansard for the 8th of March. When's the 8th of March?
Honorable Attorney General, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's on Wednesday, the 8th of March. And, Madam Speaker, into context, it follows a statement by remarks by, here we go now. Oh, we got the pages right, 15, 16. Yes, right. So I was asked by your good self, Madam Speaker, Honorable Attorney General, are you able to shed any further light on this issue as it relates to Standing Order 83? And that was in response to an observation made, Madam Speaker, about conflict. And I said, and I read, Madam Speaker, page 15 of your, Honorable Attorney General. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Only briefly to say, usually as members of our profession, if there is a conflict, we are the ones who usually best determine whether or not we are conflicted. It is part of our training. It has always been, and this is why when lawyers have matters referred to them, they do what is called a conflict check to determine whether or not there is any conflict in certain circumstances. The Honorable Minister has made it quite clear that he has gone and saw, this says the extra man, but I think mean extra mile, to seek an external opinion, which is always a commendable thing to do. Because even though sometimes we are convinced in our minds, it is always advisable to have another opinion, which he has done. And Madam Speaker, if he is satisfied, having received that opinion that he is not conflicted, then clearly it is a matter for him. And of course, if it gets to the stage where he makes further disclosure, and the motion is moving in this House, then clearly it is a matter for the House to decide but it is not unusual for an attorney to seek legal opinion just to satisfy him or herself about the issue of whether or not there are conflicts. Madam Speaker, then I was followed by Mr. McLean, who says, among other things, Madam Speaker, let me say before I read that the Attorney General said that lawyers are best to determine whether or not they have conflict. Oh yeah? Really? Even preachers are human beings. I wonder if the gentleman in Jamaica really recently determined that taking people's money and using was not a conflict. And then, Madam Speaker, further on, you, Madam Speaker, Honorable Attorney General, I thought that is what you attempted to clarify. Did I miss something? Attorney General, I am not sure what it is that he's asking me to investigate. And then, Madam Speaker, over leaf, page 16, Attorney General Samuel Burgeon. Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just reiterate, Madam Speaker, sorry. The Honorable Minister is under an obligation to examine and declare whether he has an interest. He, according to him, has done so. Not only has he done so, he has taken additional steps seeking advice from learned Queen's Counsel, who has also confirmed that he's not conflicted in any way that requires any disclosure to this Honorable House. Madam Speaker, Honorable Makiva Bushley, your position, that has been declared to the Speaker. Madam Speaker, yes. Attorney General, thank you. And unless the Honorable Member of East End has evidence to the contrary, then it is certainly a matter for the Honorable Minister and for yourself, Madam Speaker, that we take his word. Sorry, his word is his bond. But I would have thought that if he has gone and took the other precaution to get legal opinion from the Queen's Counsel, to me, that is as best as you could have hoped for in the circumstances. So I think, notwithstanding the concerns of the member for East End, and I am not for one questioning whether or not his belief is genuinely held, but the fact is that there is an opinion to the contrary, and I think at least we ought to respect the Honourable Minister's position as it relates to that. He is not just a minister of the House, but he's also a member of the legal profession, which also places a particular onus on him. Madam Speaker, this doesn't sound to me like I said the minister has no conflict, no pecuniary interest. Right. Never use those words at all either. So my question is, how could the record be corrected?
Honorable Attorney General, the Chair has taken a position that the comment is not contained in the personal statement. What he's reading is a letter that has already been sent. That's history to the House. I've given you the opportunity to clear it up by reading Hansard verbatim, and I will now move on to the next item. There is an opportunity in another forum to also correct the matter, so it would not just be corrected by what you read, but you and or the Governor has an opportunity to respond to any accuracies or inaccuracies that may or may not be contained in the letter that was sent to Her Excellency.
Madam Speaker, far from me to take issue with your ruling. I'm just simply saying that as a matter of record for this House, members have an obligation to ensure the correctness of what is read into the record of this particular House. And the Hansard now form part of the record of this House, separate and apart from the letter that is sent to Her Excellency. And in the usual course of things, Madam Speaker, the Chair would ask that the record be corrected to reflect the factual position.
Fortunately or unfortunately, Honourable Attorney General and Honourable Members, the Chair has taken the position that what the member was reading was a letter. I was not listening for the accuracy of it because it was not a current debate before the House. It's a letter, as I understand it, that has been written to Her Excellency, the Governor. It is not for the Chair to inquire into the accuracy or the inaccuracy of what his state, that the member has taken it upon himself to be responsible for the correctness or incorrectness of his statement. And this chamber is not the final arbiter for that statement. As I understood it, he was informing his constituents, members of the House, and the public at large that he had sent a letter to His Excellency Governor, and I gave him permission to read it. Because you raised the concern that there was, as in your opinion, and Hansard now reflects that your opinion was correct, an inaccuracy. I gave you the opportunity to read that. And I also went beyond my responsibilities to say that this is not the only forum that can deal with it. If the letter had been written to your good self and I was saying, Honorable Attorney General, you cannot respond, but that is not the chair's position. Madam Clerk, much obliged.
Personal explanations? Sorry. Obituary and other ceremonial speeches.
I recognize fifth elected member.
I had a second explanation. Or section.
Yes, please proceed. Member, the Honourable Member, Minister of Education, did you have a procedural point or is...
Yes, Madam Speaker, I think it is. I just need, I think maybe it's a point of elucidation on a comment that was made during the previous statement when the statement was given that a request had been made to myself to look into specific matters. And
Okay, Honourable Minister of Education, it's a point of elucidation. That statement has been completed, but in any event, the Honourable fifth elected member from Georgetown, do you consent to inquire at this stage? Honourable Minister of Education.
yes, Madam Chair, I just want to make sure that the, I guess, there isn't any misunderstanding about what may or may not have transpired with respect to any formal requests being made to look into certain matters. And having the benefit of having a sidebar conversation there and doing some checking, there had been no actual formal requests per se to look into any particular matters that have been raised. I made my debate and I certainly gave my views about certain concerns that may have been expressed or otherwise. But Madam Speaker, just for the benefit not only of the members in this chamber, but for the listening audience, if there are any concerns about gender discrimination issues as it relates to maternity and whatnot, there is, of course, the labor law provisions as well as the gender equality law, and both of those have tribunals. So the most appropriate action would be to either the individuals bringing those questions forward, but I certainly would be willing to ensure that the members have the appropriate information in order to bring forward any concerns that may have. But no, just to say no formal requests have been made of myself as minister or to my knowledge to the ministry seeking any particular action to be taken in this regard. But as I said, guidance would certainly be given to anyone that is requiring of such information.
Honourable fifth elected member from Georgetown, please move on with your personal statement.
All right, thank you, Madam Speaker, because I never had a mention of formal. What I did, I said we invited her during the debate to look into those matters, which we did. It was just a statement of fact. Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this honorable House. I'm deeply humbled each time I have the opportunity to address my people as their representative, always cognizant of the awesome responsibility I have because of their belief in me. I've always seen myself as a practical problem solver, not an ideological purist. I got into politics because I truly believed that we needed change and that I could offer a different viewpoint to bring about real change. 4 years later, I believe that I've brought those views forward, and in spite of the lack of numbers behind me, have brought about real change in certain areas and national discussion and debate, sometimes inconvenient ones in others. Wherever I am, whatever position I'm in, I've always and will always confront bias, especially the soft bigotry of low expectations. There's a tremendous gap of achievement between people in Cayman. This leaves a divided society, and whatever the causes, the effect is discrimination. Equality in our country cannot continue to remain a distant dream for children of different backgrounds. All Caymanians must believe that he or she can aspire to work hard and rise in this country to the highest heights. No Caymanian should be shackled by low expectations, imprisoned by lack of quality education, abandoned to frustration, and the darkness of self-doubt because of prejudices and discrimination. Over the last several months, many Caymanians have urged me to run again as an independent, and some who don't like the current candidates or members of government have said it's my patriotic duty to do so. I appreciate their appeals, and I've given the question serious consideration. The deadline to answer it is now. The truth is, I have serious concerns about my ability to make a difference in the next administration. I've long spoken about my concerns about single-member constituencies, as have I about party politics and partisan divide. I continue to ask myself whether I could be as effective for Caymanians in my private life as in my public life, given the lonely task I've set for myself as a truly independent politician. I've also seen what party politics brings and why I'm still convinced that it's not working for the Caymanian people, and I want no part of it. Madam Speaker, a lot has been said recently by the media and the members in here about my motivations in this meeting and some of the positions I have taken, particularly on the Legal Practitioners Bill, and I've been accused of playing politics for political gain. I assure you and this honorable House that nothing could be farther from the truth, especially given that those closest to me know that for some time I've been seriously contemplating getting out of politics because of family and personal reasons, even some on the other side of the aisle, Madam Speaker, who I confided in. Others have misinterpreted my passion for my people and my want to see them excel and have equality in their own country as political fervor gearing up for the May election. What they may now know after today, if they didn't before, is that I'm a man of my word, first and always. I assure you and this honorable House that I've never had politics enter into any decision I have made in here. I've always striven to better my people, and all the motions I have brought in this assembly is with that in mind. I've learned to play the game, and whilst I'm here, I have had to work on mastering it, but that does not mean that I enjoy it, as others seem to do. For me, it was never personal, but always simply a tool I had to use to try to get the results I wanted for my people. I hold no ill will to anyone in this House. It is not me who judges people's actions or motivations here. They have to answer, like I do, to the mirror, the man upstairs, and their constituents for their actions or inactions. I have always simply asked two questions when making any decision in politics. Is it good for Caymanians? Is it good for Cayman? In that order. Some will think it's stupid to have hit the hornet's nest and then try to re-enter the private sector and not stay in politics where I'm protected, Madam Speaker. I'm still a Caymanian in Cayman, and I will not, as I have not, apologize for my viewpoints or beg for an existence in my own country. I've always believed in my own ability and relied on a higher power for guidance and protection. I will deal with whatever comes head on. I have spoken my mind and stood for my people, and I will always be proud and satisfied because of that, even when it was controversial or inconvenient, and I make no excuses for that. I was always cognizant that a number of them could not or would not speak for themselves in public, empathizing with why that was and voicing their concerns, fears, and aspirations without fear or favor, and never because I might have been personally disadvantaged for speaking their truth. That is my job, period. I've never craved power, nor have I wanted fame. Some have said that politics would get into my blood and that I couldn't walk away, that I would need to be beaten at the polls and the position torn from me to relinquish it. Madam Speaker, all my life I've had people project themselves on me without ever really taking the time to listen and understand me and why I do things. It's helped me more than hurt me. I've always said that I was only here for a short time, and maybe that's why I've always worked for my people with a view that I was only guaranteed 4 years, so I had to make it count. I always promised my wife that wherever I was in politics after 8 years, I would return to my family without any resistance. I've said that publicly, on the campaign trail, and subsequently to all, even those who didn't believe me. To put it in other words, I love working for the people of the Cayman Islands. I love helping my fellow Caymanians, but I do not love politics. After a lot of discussion with my family, particularly my wife, we have decided that I will not offer myself as a candidate for re-election this May, and that I will go back to being a husband to my wife and a father to my children, and centering my attention on them, as I will be the first to admit they have suffered and been neglected because of my political role. Whilst I still have the opportunity to speak in this forum, I would publicly like to thank a few people who have given me the opportunity to be here, sometimes to their own disadvantage. First, my wife Leslie, who for 13 years has stood by my side, but especially in the past 4 years, through some very tough and even scary times, and without whose love and support so much I have been privileged to do would never have been possible. As my father told me the day we were married, son, you definitely married up. Second, my children, Wade and Eden, who I love so much and of whom I am so proud. Being their father is the most important job I will ever have. I am most grateful to the people of Georgetown and the Cayman Islands who for the last 4 years have placed their trust and welfare in my hands. Marilyn Connolly Basdeo, who was my campaign manager in 2013, and all my team from the last campaign, all who worked so hard and sacrificed so much to propel me into the political arena because they believed in me. I will always be humbled by that and eternally grateful for the love they and others have shown me. No one could ask for a greater honor. I was raised in a family that believes that what matters is not what you take from life, but what you give back. I believe that still. I've been so privileged to serve the people of the Cayman Islands in elective office. As an MLA, I work to empower my people and to create opportunities for them. I have often said being a Caymanian should not be a qualification for a job or a role, but neither should it be a disqualification. It is, in many instances, and this is not right in any sense of the word. I've also been the lone voice for term limits, campaign finance reform, and a national development and economic plan. I have never shied away from being the sole voice in any setting, even if it was a bit lonely at times. I've also been willing to work with anyone in here to do the country's business, and in a way that is civil and constructive, and when it benefited my people. My passion for service to my fellow Caymanians is undiminished, as is my belief in them and their abilities. But my desire to do so by serving in the Legislative Assembly has waned, particularly in the lead up to and during this meeting. For some time, I've had a growing conviction that government is not operating as it should. There's too much partisanship and not enough progress. Even at a time of enormous challenge, the people's business is not being done, or at least it is not the priority. My decision should not be interpreted for more than it is, a very difficult, deeply personal one. My decision was not motivated by political concern. Even in the current challenging environment, I'm confident in my prospects for re-election. But running for the sake of winning that election just to remain in public office is not good enough, and it has never been what motivates me. Words cannot convey, nor can I adequately express my gratitude to the great people of the Cayman Islands. I will never forget those I have been privileged to serve and those who have so kindly supported me. I have always tried to remember that my job is to work for Caymanians, not the other way around. I have observed lately that the fever of partisanship is rampant, and that is crippling this legislature, and as an election approaches, parties are doubling down on dysfunction. I love my country, and I'm committed to its future. My hope is that my people believe in themselves, come together when they need to, and when they achieve, reach down and pull others up. We're stronger together and worth more than we know. We just have to start believing that. and demanding the same from our leaders. I will not stay silent about the threat that partisan politics poses to this great country in my mind. This meeting has shown what party first above all means, what holding on to power at all costs means. In this next election, I urge all voters to demand that candidates offer intelligent, specific, and realistic ideas for bridging divides, solving problems in order to give us an honest and capable government we all deserve. I've always been drawn to impossible challenges, and none today is greater or more important than making government work for the Caymanian people, not special interest and campaign donors. Bringing about this change will require electing leaders who are more focused on getting results than winning re-election, who aren't beholden to special interests, and who are honest with the public at every turn. I look forward to continuing to do my part to meet the challenges we face as a private citizen so that our generation can do what Caymanians have always done, pass on to our children a Cayman that is stronger, more prosperous, more decent, and more just and equitable. Thank you. May God bless us all.
The House will now take a 15-minute suspension.